People are living longer nowadays. While the average life expectancy is on the rise, so is the need to train carers for the aged. Amidst the ongoing technological developments, what are the innovative breakthroughs in providing training to those who take care of the elderly? In this presentation, Professor Helen Rawson from Monash University in Australia will share some first-hand experience and findings from her research on gerontechnology and highlight the importance of collaboration amongst carers, the elderly, and professionals in bringing better training and support to the aged care workforce.
I have been working with older people since about the age 16 to 17. I actually had a Saturday job. I don't know if people in the audience understand what that means. Having a job while you're at school, it was just a Saturday job that I had where I worked with older people in aged care. I'm originally from England, and this is what I did. And I'm from a culture where older people are respected and revered. And that has carried me through in terms of when I qualified as a registered nurse and all the research and engagement I have done. It's because I know that we should be doing more, we should be doing better in how we care for our older adults. And that's one thing I always want to instill in the students that I work with. It's that it is so important to do that. And it's not just because I'm getting older and I want them to do it correct. It's so important for us to do that. I next want to talk to you about the profile of older Australians, and that gives context to my talk about using technology to support staff. Like many areas, when we think about older Australians, our population is aging due to that life expectancy, and I always see that as an overall a good thing. It's because of great outcomes in health, well-being, social care, etc. But we also know that we need to be able to care for our people as they age, as they get older, and where they want to. So about 16% of our population in Australia is deemed to be 65 years and older. And if you compare that to Hong Kong, the data that I was able to find, it was about 21.4% of the population. And we're very similar to the US, which is about 17%, and the UK, 19%. But then we look at Japan, and that's almost 30%. It shows that in our Asia-Pacific area, we've got an aging population. And whilst we may be separated by borders, by land masses, by water, etc., we have those commonalities in supporting the care of people as they age. 53% of older Australians are female. Us women are living longer compared to the men. And when we look at the younger old, that 65 to 74 group, they make up the most of that group. But what is interesting is that older group, the 85 plus group, where they make up over 13% of the older population. And that has been increasing over time. And so keep that in mind as I go on to speak about a few other things, because it demonstrates that the older group is actually getting bigger, and all that goes with that continues to grow as well. In addition to having that aging population, Australia's older adults are very diverse. Over 1/3, so 37% of older Australians were not born in Australia. And the where they're born represents that wave of migration that we have had. 18% of older Australians speak a language other than English at home, and 6% speak English not at all. And that's really important when we're thinking about anything we develop, innovate to support older people. We need to ensure that we're actually taking on board the needs of a diverse population. That's so important. So sometimes we might see research and, an exclusion criteria is if you're not able to speak or understand English. Well, if you do that, you're excluding over 1/3 of older Australians. So how can we engage with them if we're actually not facilitating their engagement? And then looking at the leading causes of death, overall, it's dementia, including Alzheimer's. But that changes when you're looking at the younger old, the middle old, and the older old. So the younger old, it's coronary heart disease. The middle old, dementia is the second leading cause of death. But as you go into the older brackets, i.e. 85 plus, dementia is the main cause. So think back a few slides ago when I said that older population is actually growing as well. So therefore, all this sort of health issues are growing as well. And so we need to take that into consideration. And finally, for this profile overview, I want to look about how we care for older Australians. So this is a very busy slide, but there's three essential main types of care for Australians' aged care services. There's home support, and that's really for people who they're at home, they may need help with cleaning, cooking, etc., and they can access home support that's supported by the government. At the latest figures, about 800,000 older people actually access that type of care. Home care is the one that we have seen the biggest explosion. It's really targeted at people who want something beyond that home support. They may need care with allied health. They may need nursing care. They may need care in addition to cleaning, etc. But the big thing is it's about supporting older adults to remain in their own homes, in their own communities. We know that is good for them, and that's where that support is. So about 213,000 older adults are accessing that care. And I hope you can see that it said that has more than tripled since 2017, because more and more people, rightly so, would like to be supported to remain in their own homes and their own communities for as long as possible. But what that then also means that we've got this other group, which is residential aged care. So essentially, residential aged care in Australia, it's a bit the same terminology as being in a nursing home. In the UK, it's called a care home. And that is where people go. It's actually permanent accommodation when they could no longer be supported to be at home. It's better for them to have 24-hour care. So you can either have that as permanent, or some people go in for short periods of respite care. Over half of people aged 65 or over entering permanent residential care are 85 and over. So what that means then, a few slides earlier, that 85 plus age group are growing. They're growing with their comorbidities, with dementia. People are staying at home longer. So that means when they're accessing residential care, they may be more sick, they may be more frail, they may have dementia, and this is the population that's being cared for. And now I'm going to contrast that to who's providing the care. The workforce in Australia, and this is from the latest census, latest being 2018, around half of the employees on residential aged care are personal care workers. So they are care workers. So we've got a population of about 456,000 aged care workers in Australia. And that's broken down into personal care workers. You may see the term personal care attendants or personal care assistants. It's a similar sort of thing. Then there are registered or enrolled nurses, and they are the minority group. And then there's the other allied health professionals, so physiotherapy, occupational therapy, etc. And for the residential aged care workforce, that works to care for those individuals, those older adults who are needing more and more care. They may be more and more frail. They may be needing end-of-life care. Most of the people caring for them is a personal care worker. It is not a registered nurse. It's only 18% are registered or enrolled nurses. And allied health is even a smaller group. So we have a workforce that's not essentially trained to deliver the care that is required in that area. And just as how our older population is very diverse, that diversity is reflected in the people who are providing care. In residential aged care, over 51% of those providing care were born outside Australia. And they're born in countries like Nepal, India, the Philippines. But what is also of note is that more than a third speak a language other than English. That again is very important when you're thinking about how do we educate, how do we prepare, how do we ensure that the workforce providing care is able to do that. So we need to ensure any education we provide, they're able to access, but they're also able to understand it. It is given in such a way that they can understand and work with. So that's just an overview of the older adults in Australia, how care is provided, and the workforce in itself. So now I'm coming on to talk about using technology to support that education for that workforce. I use the term long-term care, but residential aged care. And I actually want to start with a few takeaways. This is what you're hopefully taking away at the end. And my takeaways are actually questions, things to start making you think. Think about how can technology be utilized to to support quality care for older persons, and how that same technology could be utilized to support the workforce. The future of gerontechnology must be co-designed with end users. We saw so many things about supporting older people, rightly so, but we also need to marry that, particularly for people that are receiving care, with how do we support those people to be able to deliver that care and to do it well and to do it to meet the needs of everybody who needs them. What gerontechnology means. I actually found part of a great definition. It's about developing technologies to the aspirations and needs of aging adults. So that's important when we're thinking about not just developing something for developing its sake. I've developed this, you might like it, but actually developing something that people actually need, they want, so therefore they can then engage with it. So it's that nexus about where gerontology and technology meet, and the aim of creating, implementing, and evaluating not just products, but also services. That's really important. We've got robotics, we've got voice assistants, a number of things that's around, and it really is supporting connection, aging in place, etc. But I'm going to be not controversial, but I want to actually flip something. What I'm going to say to you is that the future is now. That population is aging now. The workforce that we need to supply to provide that care, we need that workforce now. So that collaboration, that engagement, we're doing it now. We're not planning for it in the future. We're doing it now, and we need to do it now. It's needed now. So I want to flip that idea about gerontechnology with just that marriage of technology and gerontology, but actually include the end users, all working together to determine what should happen. And at that middle, at that nexus in the middle, is where we understand how technology can support gerontological care and needs as it means to the end users. And by end users, I mean the older adults who need to use that technology. It may be informal carers who need to use technology to support the care of loved ones, etc., and also a workforce that are providing care. These are who the end users are. So thinking about that future going forward, I want to look at some opportunities for care. Now, I also want to remind you, most of the photos that I am using here, everyone who knows me and my passion for older adult care is, I like to see positive images of older adults. We know ageism is out there, and I like to see those positive images. So in a project that I'm doing at the moment, part of it includes doing videos and photos of older adults that we can use. You don't see these positive images. So a lot of the images that you will see in my talk, they're actual people, staff, and older people that we use in our studies. Back in about 2018, a project that I was part of and a team, we co-developed something called Brain Track, and that was published in the Journal of Clinical Nursing. And essentially, this consisted of cognition and risk assessment, tailored evidence-based strategies, and monitoring and evaluating for effectiveness. Essentially, it was an app that staff can use in real time at the bedside to support patients' needs who have behavioral and psychological symptoms of neurocognitive disorders. So, for example, dementia and delirium. What can they do to support them? So that's essentially one app that was used. It was evidence-based, and it was co-developed with nurses who are the workforce, experts in technology, and also a consumer. So that's how we're able to work with that particular app that they can use for decision making. Something else I want to talk about that we've done, we all remember that dreaded COVID-19 that came in 2020. In residential aged care, that was a big impact, particularly in Australia and particularly in the state of Victoria. So I'm from the state of Victoria. Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. It's, that's sadly a record that we have. But when COVID-19 started, and we realized the impact that was having in residential aged care. Keep in mind, in residential aged care, it's a home, it's a nursing home, it's where people live. It's not a high-functioning infection control unit. It was never meant to be that way. I've worked in residential aged care. The most I've had to wear to protect myself, maybe some goggles and a plastic apron. COVID-19 brought a different lens to that. You saw the figures about the workforce. This is a workforce that was not trained to use full PPE. And we all know it wasn't just about putting it on, but putting it on and taking it off correctly. That was so important. So when that was coming about, the Department of Health in Victoria, we were asked, what can we do to support the workforce in aged care? Have some sort of education and training in infection control and using personal protective equipment. In our school academics, we know about educating the workforce. I was on this team as somebody with the lead for aged care who understand what the context was. We also had people on the team who were experts in infection control. So we were able to develop something quickly. And because of my engagements in aged care, we were able to work with an aged care provider to test what we developed. We needed something quickly. And what we developed was an education program that went out to staff. And essentially what it was, the staff wanted to know, how do we put it on? How do we take it off? They didn't want to have the first time they put it on was when they needed to put it on. That's the last thing you want. So they wanted practice. So we actually developed that program and we spoke to them. They wanted something in person. So we had teams going out across the state delivering that education in person. They were teaching about infection control, but also the order that you put PPE on, the order that you take it off to ensure that you're protecting yourself and others you're working with and caring for. That program was delivered to over 4,200 staff across our state. That involved about 275 residential aged care homes. And that was the largest state-funded program delivered to residential aged care workforce. Of course, the program was done and we went away. We wanted something that was sustainable, wanted something that staff could use to be able to practice. So we developed a virtual reality simulation. The focus of that was to consolidate knowledge, build on the sustainability of the program, and also have people to test their competency and also ensure that they're up to date based on that virtual reality simulation. Our team at Monash University, we worked with a technology company that was very adept in immersive technology. They weren't experts in aged care. So that's where that great collaboration worked. And we were able to build a program for them to practice simulations. It was important for us to understand the context and also, is it feasible and would it be usable? I've just got the next slide. It's just some images from the virtual reality simulation. And we actually used that through a PC, not through goggles. We developed characters, avatars, to ensure it was relevant to context. One was a registered nurse, one was a care worker, and an ancillary support person, a person working in the kitchens or cleaning, etc. And we were able to use that intelligence to mimic real scenarios that those workers would face. That's what makes it real for them and contextually relevant when they could see themselves or what they do. Because most of the training, etc., that had been developed at the time for infection control, for residential aged care, was adapted from acute care. It's very different. You can't just adapt it. It needs to be more in context. We actually helped them build the aged care environment, and that was an iterative process, going back and forth with them. They built something and said, actually, no, this is meant to be a home. There's carpet on the floor. There are pictures on the walls. There are flowers. There are plants. All that they needed to be able to see. So when entering the VR space simulation, the participants were introduced to the characters, and they could select a character that they wanted and the environment, and then they had clinical scenarios, and they needed to then make decisions about what the avatar does. So they're actually speaking to the avatar, what order do I put things on in, and then what order do I take? So they've got images of the avatar putting gloves on, putting the mask on, putting the gown on, and also taking it off. And not just doing that, what they do next with it. As you can see, there are bins there. It's about disposing that correctly. And they're actually given prompts. Are you sure it's correct? And if somebody's telling you, are you sure it's correct? Well, you understand, well, maybe it's not correct, and I have to make another decision. But it's giving them that clinical decision making, and that's the practice, so that when they come to a real life situation, hopefully then they're ready. This all sounds great, we've used it, but there are challenges. These are not in any rank order. Time. For that workforce in aged care, they are so busy, they don't have downtime for education. So you need something that they can do within the workplace. Some aged care providers in Australia actually pay the staff to engage in education, and still they won't do it because they're doing other things. They want something to be done at the work time. But also they want something that is immersive or interactive. I don't know if you've had to do online training for work or part of your studies. It's almost a tick box exercise that you're doing. But some things like this, you want people to take things in to understand what they're doing. It's also about that stakeholder engagement. If people are invested in what you're doing, they're likely to then engage. That engagement then likely to support implementation. So it's important to have that engagement, and that's something that we invest in. So this is why that collaboration between technology and healthcare is important, because we need that collaboration to support engagement. And we had engagement with aged care providers to do this work. There's that perception that anything I do will increase my work that I'm already doing. It's just in our mindset. I know when I worked in the clinical field as a nurse, when something was brought in new, I immediately went to, this is going to increase my workload, without even thinking about it, without even actually looking into it. So that perception needs to be broken down. Engaging people supports doing that. We can't deny there's resistance to change. Change is difficult for everyone. When something is new, not everybody comes on board and at the same time. And there was certainly resistance to change was something that we saw. Something that's really important in healthcare is the availability of any equipment or tools. And that's important when you're developing technology in healthcare to support staff. It's all well and good developing something, but if it cannot be used because the infrastructure isn't there, you're on a non-starter completely. So for example, in the residential aged care space, they haven't got access to many computers. And I'm generalizing here, not all will be the same, but really they won't have access, for example, to computers, let alone when we developed that VR simulation, they did not have those goggles at all, which is why we didn't pursue with doing that, because yes, we can get it as part of the training, but it's not sustainable. Also, I talked about that diversity in the workforce. And I don't mean the diversity in culture and language, but we have differences in terms of a registered nurse is very differently trained to a personal care worker who might have done a very short education course. So it's very different workforce, and you need to take that on board. Culture, language, and their training. So for example, in the VR simulation, we acknowledged the diversity in the workforce. And one of the avatars I created was Danny, who was a care worker. Danny had a backstory. He was from the Philippines, and all this the participant engages with when they pick that avatar. We ensure that we have the appropriate accent as well. Another thing I wanted to share is that when are they doing this? When they're talking about washing hands, one thing that our aged care partners actually said is, can you make sure it actually does carry on for 20, 30 seconds so that people understand how long 20 or 30 seconds is? So it's during that washing period, Danny starts talking to the person about, I'm really looking forward to the end of my shift. I've got a dog. And I think Danny was also a student doing something else. So they get to engage. But that all adds to the contextual realness for the person that must be considered. And then, of course, it's the cost. Technology is not cheap. So you need to be thinking of things that is actually reasonable and be able to demonstrate to providers, well, if you spend the money on here doing this, your staff will have their training done. But also you could use it for something else. It can't be something that's standalone because they just will not engage. At least so, because everyone needs to be thinking about that cost. I want to actually go on to talk about something else now. One of the key takeaways I had was co-designing the future of gerontechnology. What co-design is. Essentially, it's how we work in partnership. It's a way to approach design solutions. And that could be designing a service. It could be designing a product. You've got technology working with the clinical people. Perhaps those clinical people may or may not also be the researchers coming into play. And then the end users, whether they are older adults, carers, or staff, working together. So the professionals and people, what we call lived experience, working in partnership. Now, that partnership is important. That collaboration is important. It's not about one group doing something and just sharing it with the others. They're actually coming up with those together. It's about really understanding what is the problem, what is the issue, what is the context to understand what needs to be done. So it's about listening, it's about learning and making decisions together in the hope that whatever is developed meets the needs of everyone. This image in the background is actually from some co-design work we've been doing in residential aged care. End user engagement. Around that table, we have people living in residential aged care. We have staff working in residential aged care. We have got the researchers and clinicians all around the table working. And something to keep in mind is that we have to facilitate that for people living in aged care or older adults to engage, because we want that collaboration to be meaningful. We don't want it to be tokenistic, and we want to empower people to engage. In 2018, Australia had a royal commission into their aged care quality and safety. And the final report was released in March 2021. There were 148 recommendations. I'm not going to read them to you, don't worry. One of those recommendations was researchers working directly with people receiving care, employees, training organizations, etc., to evaluate new and innovative models of care and technological support and solutions. So that's what this commission recognized, that value of technology, technological support, the value of innovation, but also co-designing it with the people that it's meant to use it and work with it and also be cared for with it. So in this image, again, it's people from our co-design group. And co-design takes time. When we're developing our research proposals, etc., we look at what does co-design mean. So for the study I'm working on at the moment, we had this idea. We use two aged care providers, which are not close together. In fact, they're about half an hour's drive away from each other. For that first part about listening and learning, we had interviews and focus groups with older adults, with family members, and with staff, all from residential aged care, to understand what the issues are. And then we had these co-design meetings before we developed what we wanted to develop. And our idea was, well, we'll do one at each place and then we'll come and Zoom and do it all together, etc. So that was our deal going in. We thought this will engage everyone. We had to quickly flip that when the people living in residential aged care said, we don't want to be on Zoom. We want people to sit around a table and talk with us. We want to be able to engage. And if you're doing true co-design, then you have to change to be able to empower them to engage. And that's what we had to do. It meant then that we had more and more sessions of that engagement than we had originally planned in our project. But we need to be flexible and adaptable to do that. When we worked with our partner organizations to identify the problem, and that's the stakeholder buying, and this is me talking to you now about how using that co-design approach when we're thinking about technology or anything else, is how we can hopefully overcome some of the challenges that I identified earlier. The image on the right is an image from a health service because it really depicts what co-design involves. Understanding the problem, discussing the findings. So when we did that initial listening, gathering information, we went back to these older adults and shared that with them. Look, this is some of the findings. What are your thoughts about this? Anything we need to add? Because this is all part of that pre-planning. And this is some of the things that we get from when we work with older adults. People are listening to us. People are asking our opinion rather than telling us this is what's going to happen. So that's so important when we're thinking about technology. We're engaging to know what those solutions might look like. When we discuss that, we have to support them to engage. Like I said, we had to change how we did our co-design meetings, or workshops as we call them, to meet the needs of the people that are involved. And the other thing we had to think about is, of course, if there was any infections in the aged care home, we did all our planning. But when you're working in a real-world clinical context, real-world issues happen. And one of those was, oh, we actually have an outbreak. We can't have the co-design meeting today. And we said, okay, we have to come back another time. And that's that iterative process that needs to continue. And then we look at that co-design about what that solution should be. And we go off as researchers and work with that and then take it back to them. This is all before you implement anything. Go back. Is this what you meant? How do we look at that? And everyone's sitting, working together. So I talked about it takes time. It needs flexibility. You need to foster engagement. It can address the challenge, but it's also very rewarding. And that's what we have identified when we're working with staff about solutions, working with staff about how they can be supported. On my final slide, I'm actually going to go back to the key takeaways. The first one is the future is now. We need to be doing this now. We need to be thinking about technology. How can we use that to support quality care? How can we use that to support the workforce? If we haven't also considered the staff or the people that's actually going to be providing care, then actually we won't have the outcomes for that older person, because we have one group that hasn't engaged for whatever reason because they were never part of the planning. And then so we're on a non-starter completely. And the fourth thing I want to talk about is that co-design must occur for gerontechnology, and thus must occur with end users, with older adults, with family members, with informal carers, and with those formal carers. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed.